Thank you, Mr. Temporary Speaker. I join the member for Murray-Darling in condemning the alleged anti-Semitic attack on the two families that took place in Bondi, and I also offer my support to the families and the broader community. Mr. Speaker, when we are young, we're idealistic. We think in absolutes. As we age, as we bear the struggles of our human journey, we realise that life is increasingly more grey than it is black and white. However, there are some absolutes that we must carry with us throughout our collective journey. Arguably, the most important absolute is to be completely intolerant to racism. The deepest scars of humanity were caused by the blade of racism. Our history book is stained with such scars. We only need to traverse the recent chapters of this book to understand the depth of these scars. We all know of the traumatic circumstances and the huge loss of life in World War II in 1939 to 45, where over 6 million Jews perished. Then we move forward and we see that between 1975 and 1979, over 2 million people were killed in the Cambodian genocide under the hand of the Khmer Rouge. Then even in the 1960s to the 90s, over 3,000 people were killed in Northern Ireland in relation to the religious troubles that occurred there. And again in the 90s, we have the Yugoslav wars, where up to 500,000 people perished. But Mr. Speaker, regrettably, these scars are not limited to history. Today, as we speak, we are still creating history. We are still creating scars where the ink is still drying. Now, we see conflicts, for example, in Egypt, where last year over 1,000 people perished. Conflicts in Iraq, where over 6,000 people perished last year. In Sudan, where over 2,500 people perished. And in Nigeria, again, over 1,000 people perished in 2013. And Mr. Speaker, politics and the lust for power is at the inner sanctum of these conflicts. There can be no doubt of that. But it is the ugly face of racism and discrimination that is used by those in power to mobilise and manipulate the masses to achieve their ends. And it is disappointing in the extreme to see when these incidents occurs in a great country like ours, such as Australia. But the reality is, Mr. Speaker, that in our country we are blessed because these attacks are random. These attacks are rare, and when these attacks take place, we have a strength of community that we stand up in unison to condemn these attacks. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I think the strength of a community cannot so much be measured as to whether these incidents occur, because they will always occur. Whenever you get a population the size of New South Wales of 7 million, a city the size of Sydney of 4.5 million, a country the size of Australia of 24 million, you're always going to have outliers in community that do terrible things. So we don't necessarily measure our society by these attacks. We measure our society by how we respond to those attacks. And how we responded, I think, in these circumstances, is particularly laudable. I'd like to particularly mention those community organisations that stood up immediately to condemn these attacks. Apart from the political leaders right across the breadth of this country, including the Premier, the Leader of the Opposition, and the like, we heard from organisations such as the United Muslim Women's Association, Cricket Australia, Together for Humanity Foundation, the Australian Chinese Community Association, the Exodus Foundation, the Lebanese Muslim Association, the Ethnic Communities Council of New South Wales, the Australian Baseball Federation, the Columbian Mission Institute, the Australian Hellenic Council, the Refugee Council of Australia, the Australian Federation of Ukrainian Organisations, the Australian Rugby League, the New South Wales Federation of Community Language Schools, to mention just a few. All stood up within about 24 to 48 hours to universally condemn these attacks. This, Mr. Speaker, is truly a sign of the strength of our society, that we stand up together to condemn these errant attacks. I'd particularly like to pay tribute, whilst I'm on my feet, to the Jewish Board of Deputies, and in particular to Yair Miller, the President, and to Vic Gallaudet, who's in the gallery today as CEO. As Minister for Citizenship and Multiculturalism, I'm often engaged with many community organisations, but I can say openly and proudly that there are not many organisations such as the Jewish Board of Deputies that have such a fine reputation and a work ethic for interculturalism, interfaith activities. I often say, and I've said publicly before, that they are a shining light, a beacon if you wish, for other communities to aspire to, because the Jewish Board of Deputies continually work hard at promoting interfaith, at promoting interculturalism, at building the bridge of understanding, or the bridges of understanding between communities, and these are the bridges that will make sure that these attacks don't occur again.